everyone. Again, we're trying something a little more creative than our usual service. So you will be involved in an exercise later on, so just know that. But I'd like to begin by first introducing our speaker today. It's my friend and my current mentor at NBC, Susanna Warren. She's going to explain a little bit more about what NBC is, especially in her experience. It is her passion, I can assure you of that. But Susanna first started coming to this church, I think she said it was 23 years ago. Her young daughter was either 2 or 3, and her young son, Chad, who was in my younger son, John's age group. She became passionate about the message that Unity gives, the principles, the writings of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. So I mentored her in becoming versant with what's called the spiritual education and enrichment process by which you become a licensed Unity teacher, as I said, which essentially is a lay minister. But in any case, later on, she really became passionate about nonviolent, compassionate communications. The founder of that program was Marshall Rosenberg. He actually spoke here in 2006, I believe it was. And she and another friend took off with real passion. And she has since become a trainer in that program. She's also an assessor in training. She's a coach, a life coach. And she has inspired me in so many ways, and now she mentors me in NBC. Again, NBC was started by a psychologist, a doctor of psychology, Marshall Rosenberg. Again, he spoke here. But he also wrote a book, and I'll recommend it to all of you. It's called Nonviolent Communication, The Language of Love. So with that, let me again introduce Susanna Warren.
I also learned about nonviolent communication when I was at Unity Village. Becoming a licensed Unity teacher is one of my moments of spark. And also there was a director here. I used to be the youth director here, and the one director before me, she had a way with children that I just couldn't figure out. And at the time, my little girl Savannah had a huge amount of energy, and she would say, "I love the kids the best that say no," and grrr. And I was like, really? Because I grew up in a home, I don't know about you, where we wanted kids to be good, good little boys and girls, and maybe it was even more fun to see them versus hear them. So I was the youth director here, and I was invited to an NBC Compassionate Nonviolent Communication intro right here, and almost pulled in the door because I was ready to go home. And when I sat there, what I heard in my own words or my own ears is, it seemed like the Unity message to me only a real practical how-to. How do I love my neighbor as myself? How do I love my enemies? At times, how do I love my little girl that says no all day long and wants to pull her hair bow out and wear her own clothes and screams all night to get into bed? How do I do that? How do I take that, what Jesus says, to live life and live more abundantly? So that was my question, and I guess my own personal story was, I grew up in a home with a lot of turbulence, a lot of my parents fighting, and in my school there was busing where there was people of color and white people fighting, and I can just remember one felt sense when I grew up was, when I get older, I want to do something different. I want to live a different life. But I often found that after I got married and started having children, that's when it sort of came out, my own patterns of how I grew up, or my own trauma or my own issues kind of started to come up. So I did seek a deep, deep spiritual path. But what I found in compassionate nonviolent communication that so intersected with my spiritual journey here at Unity was this way of cultivating love and compassion, finding the humanity in all of us, finding a way to ground myself in principle, but also in my interpersonal relationship with people, how to create a field of compassion, of presence, of empathy. So in nonviolent communication, like Jewelene said, there's trainers like me all over the world, and there's sort of 4 ways that you could use the work. On one level, just like the message title, a simple toolkit of how to communicate more effectively, whether you're a boss or a mom or a church leader, how to get your message across in a way that will invite people to be more interested, or how to listen in a way people know that you care. There's a saying, people don't want to know how much you know until they know how much you care. And so how do we do that? And I think that's kind of the essence of nonviolent communication. It's like the heart of the work is about these universal human needs that we all have as humans. I like to call them like the fruits of the Spirit. So if you think about what needs does a human need to thrive? So when you grow up, or if you have kids, like, what are the essences of what values, what needs that you want the people you love or yourself to really have, not just to survive everyday life, but to thrive? And when I asked that question, which I've traveled to Uganda and Ghana and Bali and Spain, all these wonderful places in the world, this same question asked in all these different languages, words like love, belonging, meaning, purpose, to be understood, to matter, to be seen for my intention, for community. So all of these qualities and characteristics that I named could be called these human needs, these qualities that make us all human. In the practice of NVC, I don't think I'll quite get into it today, but just the principle is that we focus so much like Unity. We focus on, we know that we have these thoughts, right? In Unity, we're kind of constantly saying thoughts held in mind, produced after our kind, so we're watching. We're aware of our thoughts. We're aware of what they're saying to us. And what compassionate nonviolent communication invites us to do is drop from our thinking, not to ever think we're going to really get rid of it, but to look underneath of the thinking and be aware of what's in our hearts. So for me, it's been the most powerful way to go from thinking to felt, heartfelt sense. I think that's where this presence of empathy last month, of sort of the theme was self-care, self-love. And this month is about care and love for others. So this is just spot on with this intersectionality of NVC, as Jewelene called nonviolent communication and unity, because there's a part about an empathic presence that we cultivate and we practice a very distinct, a simple process that helps us know what's in our heart, what matters, and how to drop out of our judgmental thinking and our blaming and shaming. And I don't know about you, but with my parents and my school's best intention, the best intention for me, a lot of times how we solved problems or how we got to a solution is sort of a debate on who's right, who's wrong. If we can figure out who's to blame, we can solve this problem. So what NVC and what Unity asks us to say is to suspend our judgment, suspend our thinking, and to drop in this field of an empathic space. So I just want to take a pause and see if you want to comment on that, Jewelene.
Yes, I do. First of all, again, I first attended a nonviolent communications workshop back in 2009, and I was sort of blown away. Because for one thing, one of the things that I had learned from reading Charles and Rella Fillmore was this idea of oneness, that we're all one, that we all matter. They make that very clear, and that we can trust God. But for me, there wasn't a lot of how. One of the things Charles Fillmore says, I believe in prosperity, his book on prosperity is, you must let go of this idea of yours and mine. And I thought that was rather a revolutionary idea, but how do you do that? So at the workshop, some of that came up, and I got a lot of clarity around that, and understood oneness at a deeper level. And the thing that was interesting about the two concepts of the two movements is that Charles never intended for unity to become a church. He saw it as an adjunct to people's established religion. They were to come and listen to unity and get lessons. Well, the same thing, it did, though, spread and become a global movement. And the same thing is true of Marshall Rosenberg. He started this as an educational, worldwide, global way of teaching people the how of love. And there was something you said about getting underneath and giving the opportunity to suspend judgment, suspend thinking. And I'm still trying to practice that.
Sure, it's a lifelong practice.
Yes.
So there's 4 pieces about nonviolent communication that you can practice. That's the skill set. There's a spiritual component, just as much as unity, like the essence of God, the divine that's in us. There's also this psychology piece, because of course the founder was a psychologist, Marshall Rosenberg, about what makes us human and why do we do the darn things that we do. I really love that. But I also want to name this last piece about social change that I'm so on fire about right now, is that just the essence of the unity message and the message of nonviolent communication is about we all matter. We're all humans. All humans matter. And it's kind of not okay to know that and then not be active in some way helping our world to create a world where people matter. For me, at least, it's not as much okay anymore that I want to be doing something actively to show this principle of love, to work towards, to make my mark on systematic racism or systematic oppression. So I love this piece about nonviolent communication, and trainers like me all over the world are standing for justice. And how are we doing that? Well, I want to just name, like, there's this constant practice between the judgmental mind and this sort of heart of what matters. So I have a little, it's kind of like a poem, but it's a story that kind of shows what I'm talking about in a simple way. So I'm going to read it. Called The Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting at the airport one night, was several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man sitting behind her, as bold as he could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she munched the cookie and watched the clock as the gusty cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken your eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what the heck he would do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve. He's also so rude. Why didn't he even show so galled and sighed with relief when her plane flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat. Then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she grasped with a surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. "If mine are here," she moaned in despair. "The others were his, and he tried to share." Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. So there's such a lesson in the story about the human mind and how we perceive and how we make up stories and how we misinterpret. And that's kind of the passion for me of non-violent communication and kind of the essence of unity. And now just kind of to complete, to move towards completion, I want to share one story where I thought, or one actual experience that I thought, I will practice this for the rest of my life. As I said earlier, that I started coming to Unity when my daughter was born at 23. She's 23 now. And she was a teenager, and I'd been practicing NBC for 2 or 3 years, trying to get kind of this new style down, this new system. And we had agreed that after school she would clean out the dishwasher and get her laundry out of the dryer. That's kind of what we made this family agreement, so I didn't do the old style parenting where I'm like, you do this or you're going to be punished, you know. So I was in this kind of making agreements with her, both of us sort of co-creating this life we wanted to live. But she had not done that the day before, so I talked to her about it. She was supposed to do it. And she came home the next day, and I was like fuming. Well, I came home from work, and the things weren't done again. So it was day 2. So I could feel my thoughts getting channeled like my mom. Because she you didn't do your chores the first time. That would have been one thing. But the second time? So when she walks in, it's kind of hard for you because maybe you haven't practiced, but I was practicing NBC. Like my perfect NBC was like, when I see the dishes still in the dishwasher and the clothes and the laundry, I feel, and before I could even get that, she started screaming at me like, you don't care about anybody. You're like thinking of yourself. And she runs up her steps and slams the door. Well, I don't know about you, but if I would have screamed at my mom after I didn't do what she'd asked me twice, I just had this vision she would have laid me out on the floor. And literally, my veins were like channeling that, like I'm going to kill her. I mean, I literally felt like I was going to just kill her. And I remember that many times before that, we would get to this point and we would just start to escalate. I would be channeling my anger and rage for whatever she was or wasn't doing. And I was like, okay, let me try to practice NBC here. And I sat down on my couch. And the practice is about what are you feeling and what are you needing? And I was just like, I'm feeling like my body is on fire. I'm having this fire run through my body. And my immediate need was for respect. Like respect with a R-E-S-P-T, And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, repeat, what am I feeling? What am I needing? What am I feeling? What am I needing? And I'm just like, and then it kind of sinks down beyond that respect and I start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to do that same thing. That reactive, I wanted to grab the door and just and I don't know how long I sat there, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I don't know. But I got a text. At the time my phone must have been sitting beside me and there was this little emoji with a sad face that said, Mom. And the minute I seen that, I sink down a little further and I realized, well, my need is really for connection and understanding and not to carry this kind of behavior that's been in my family. And maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds later, there's another emoji, and this one has a great big tear, and it says, Mama. And I sink down a little bit deeper in my heart, and I'm feeling like, wow, something's going on here. And then the last emoji came, and these gushing tears, the rivers of tears, and it said, Mommy. And I immediately, this was 8 years ago, and I can feel the feeling till this day. Like how that, like the Cookie Thief story, just those 3 little texts, 3 little words shifted everything. And I was in this state of like sadness. I was sad because like what had happened? She's screaming at me, I'm ready to scream at her, kind of do this thing. And when I went in to talk with her, of course I was in a different frame of mind. I was like, hey, what's going on? And as the story unraveled and the story unfolded, her best friend was cutting herself at school. And she had found out. And the story goes on. I think that's just the essence that I want you to know. That, and all I could think of, if I would have done what, to be honest about, I've done many times, like engaged in a big fight, a big argument. If I would have done that, she would have never shared that moment. I don't think I would have ever known that about her friend. But just that one moment of taking a pause, to drop down from my head of thinking my stories, thinking I know what's going on here, that she's being rebellious or she's being, not conforming to what we agreed on. It gave me a pause, this empathic presence, being able to be present to her. And of course, I don't know, 8 or 9 years later, this girlfriend of hers, we talked to her mom, she got into some therapy, she's graduated from college, she's getting ready to get married. So that one moment of that, being able to have some sense of agency, some sense of self-empowerment, to be able to actually take a unity principle and embody it, and ground it, and be able to discern in the moment. And oftentimes people ask me after I tell the story, well, did you talk to her about the laundry? I did. Not that time, not at that moment. But yes, absolutely I talked to her about the laundry and the dishes. Yes, absolutely I still wanted my needs for, agreements to be kept, a beautiful home, and us working in partnership. So that's, for me, sort of the power of this intersectionality of spiritual practice and this empathic presence. And I just want to say a couple of things about this empathic presence is that oftentimes people think you have to be really, we think we're only offering empathy when someone's going through a real hard time. And this particular empathy that we're offering is so different than this kind of fix it, give advice, tell our own story, tell our own experience. It's about tuning in to the person, creating a presence. I think about Darren and Jewelene both. I spend a good amount of time with them here and there, and we really create that feel of like, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm listening. You matter. But what's so beautiful about this empathy, it's not just when someone's going through a hard time. It's so beautiful when someone's celebrating. And when they have a joy in their life that we're with them, we're celebrating with them. The Dalai Lama said, I want to read this book because I want to really get it right. And he says, when you count others' happiness as your own, your chance of being happy increases 6 billion to 1. Wow. I just let that settle in me. When I'm looking to listen to my friends and family or the store clerk when I'm checking out at the supermarket, hearing their sorrows, their pain, their joys, their celebrations, that's a moment that can increase increase my happiness. And I know that because psychologically and scientifically, any act of kindness that we do releases oxytocin in our body. It's like a feel-good, well-being drug. So every time I'm kind to myself, because my body or soul doesn't really know if I'm having an act of kindness to you or to me. Isn't that cool? So every time I'm kind, compassionate, create an empathy field, an empathic field for someone, I'm able to release chemicals to help me ground in my principles and my well-being. So I think we'll move towards a closing, but I want to see if you want to add something to that, Jewelene.
Yes, thank you so much for that heartwarming story. But again, I want to remind myself and others that it's simply with the practice of NVC and continuing work with the principles of unity and how they affect our lives, it just raises your awareness in so many ways, and your automatic reactionary previous behaviors will change to ones that are more uplifting, more positive, more loving. And I'll give you an example this morning. When we were preparing for the bulletins for this particular session, I spoke to PJ over the phone who does the bulletins. And I had given her the title, Nonviolent Compassionate Communication Love's Toolkit. So when I got here this morning and I saw that it was Love's Toolbox, I was taken aback. And at first my reactionary thing was, why did she change that? And then I stopped, I paused, and I said, oh, I know how much PJ is dedicated to making this the best service we can give. And our relationship is one that I appreciate in my life. So I said, well, what's going on here? And I thought, well, you know what? Toolbox is better than toolkit. So maybe that's why she did it. But I had to go through that whole NVC process. And I do that more and more. I don't do it every time still, but I do it more and more in my life. And I have come to the place where I can feel and appreciate those loving relationships that I'm in. And I don't take offense so quickly anymore. So that's what I wanted to share. It's really a life-enhancing practice, both unity and NVC.
So, just what I'd like you to leave with is, what way will you more cultivate love? How will you do that when you walk out the door today? Will you ground yourself more in your meditation and prayer? Will you take a class here at Unity or a compassionate communication workshop? Will you do random acts of kindness? Will you catch yourself right when it's getting ready to come out, like to take a deep breath? Will you consciously practice when you're getting bored or you're kind of going offline with your brain? Will you practice some conscious, healthy behaviors like taking a walk or eating healthy or exercising? All of these things matter. They all sort of accumulate to ground us in this presence that we call love. These are the practical toolbox, toolkit values. So thank you so much for listening to us and allowing us to do our message a little different today.
Yes, thank you, Susanna, for that wonderful talk and sharing of your life experience. Thank you.